All right, so here we are again. This is part two of Songword Art House's artist interview series that we've entitled Cocktails and Conversation. So everybody grab your cocktail because it's about to begin. We have the very good fortune of having artist Paul Whitehead, and he has three spectacular pieces as part of our series Rebel Yell, Art Inspired by Songs of Rebellion. And I met Paul just a month or two right before the exhibition launched, so he didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare. But you know, an artist like Paul doesn't need a lot of time apparently, because he just absolutely delivered some spectacular pieces, and we're very proud to have them here. And I'm not trying to blow smoke in anybody's direction by telling you that honestly, the pieces that you have provided are some of the most talked about and attention getting pieces in the exhibition. So congratulations and thank you very much. The customers that come into the gallery here in Malibu are really appreciating what you've done. And you've got one painting and two pieces, two sort of, I don't know what you would call them, they're multimedia pieces, but they're using real world materials. It was really unexpected because from what I knew of you, you were predominantly a painter. I didn't know that you worked in these other disciplines, but I'm thrilled to have it. And it's also a sort of a unique centerpiece here in the gallery because they just, they stand out. They're not paintings, they're physical materials. And I'll get to that in a little bit and I'll showcase it. But I just want to say, welcome, Paul. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So I'll start off by saying that you have had quite the career, and it started back, and I believe in the 1960s when you were in London as a young man. You were born and raised in London, but your career really took off at the heyday, sort of swinging London, as they say, when things were really alive and energized and creative. So it couldn't have come at a better time for a character like yourself. Am I right?
Correct. Yeah. The funny thing is, I'm sure Amanda will bear this out. When you were living there, it didn't seem unusual or earth-changing. It was just what was going on, you know. Like 67 was a great year. It was the only year I think in my life where I really thought we could change things. We were somewhat naive, you know, the whole love thing and the whole love generation. And we really did believe that love could change the world. It was a positive thing to put out into the world, right? And for about 6 months, there was like an international feeling. We would get people to come to London from other cities and they'd say, oh, the same thing's going on in San Francisco and LA, you know. They would say, it's exactly the same feeling, exactly the same vibe where we're coming from, which was great because there wasn't really any other way to communicate, you know.
True, and so I think that's when you really know something's going on, as, when you're sort of in touch with people from different geographic regions. The world is become flatter in the decades that have passed, so it's really quite the accomplishment to have that at a time when you didn't have cell phones and social media to put in touch with each other.
You think what we didn't have? We didn't have fax machines to begin with, right? I mean, that was in the future. UPS wasn't invented, FedEx wasn't invented. There was none of that stuff. Cell phones, of course. We had a phone that sat on the table in the hall. And if you weren't there when it rang, tough luck. I mean, no answering machines, right? So I don't know how we did it. It was amazing. I mean, we would write postcards to each other and send letters to each other, you know. But somehow, I don't know, it was miraculous. Somehow it all got done.
Royal Mail. If you write a letter in the morning, you get it delivered in the afternoon in England.
Yeah, right. Across London, yeah.
Well, for however it went down, and it happened over in Europe and obviously spread over to the United States, you came into the scene in what capacity? How did you kind of get your start as an artist, and what discipline were you, or what was your style at the time?
The very, very first job I got as an artist was working for a sign company, a local sign company, designing signs, you know, plastic signs, backlit signs, right? That's kind of where I learned all my typography and design and that kind of stuff, right? Then I got a job at an advertising agency as a sort of apprentice, you know. intern kind of thing, right? That was a mind blower to see how that world worked. And from that, I met a guy called Gene Mann, who became quite famous. He designed the Apple record label. I became friendly with him, and from him, met people in the record business, met musicians, and so on. And it just kind of snowballed, you know. Uh,
And then, of course, you got into the scene with the record industry and record album covers, which is, I would say, is what you're best known for, doing the album covers for the band Genesis. And so that's obviously, a huge feather in your cap, quite an accomplishment, because those were major hits, those albums, and the artwork was the signature, the visual artistic signature of that album. So, like, I think I read somewhere in your bio that it was not only a collaborative experience for you working with the band, and I want to get into that a little bit. But once the fans got a hold of the album art, which everybody did back in those days, album art was so much a part of the experience. They would sit down with the album, listen to the music, and connect the dots however they wanted to, whether it was faces of the individual band members with photography, or in your case, getting into this surrealist rabbit hole where people were trying to look for meaning in what was created in the art and how that related to the lyrics. So talk to me a little bit about that. Your connection with the band Genesis, and how important was your surrealist narrative style to the success of that collaboration?
it was kind of interesting because I obviously being an artist, making my living in that realm, that's my language, right? My language is visuals, and I studied art at college, and I was very interested in studying all the different aspects of art, not only classical art but modern art, surrealism, all the rest of it, right? So I had a pretty good knowledge of all the stuff that had gone before. So when I would meet a band, particularly Genesis, because they were very young. I think they were only 20 or something, very early 20s when I met them. They had a great knowledge of music, very good composers, but they didn't have a very good visual sense, Peter Gabriel did. He was very aware of what was going on, right? So the first meetings I had, I'd go to the library and get armfuls of books. I'd listen to the music, I'd read the lyrics of the songs, and I'd go and I'd say, okay, you could do something like this. You know about this guy? They either knew him or they didn't, And we'd arrive at sort of an idea. It was like, well, we'll do something like this in that style, right? So there was a very interesting dialogue took place. Their musical language sort of inspired my graphic and visual language, and vice versa, As you know, they took elements off the covers and they use them on their stage, stage show. Like Peter Gabriel did the fox in the dress on the stage,
Fantastic.
So the cycle was kind of complete.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good relationship.
And so, do you lament the fact that album art has basically, been eliminated from the whole relationship between the listener and the band? I mean,
It's kind of sad, really. Yeah. You think about back in those days. I mean, I have so many people. They say to me, you take the gatefold cover, which is 24 by 12, right? And you put it on your knee. Well, first of all, you could like sort out your pot, sort the seeds from the and roll your joint on the record cover, right?
of
The other
course,
thing
that's
was
why it was made like that in flattened
pardon?
cardboard. That's why it was flattened cardboard, right, and not circular.
Right. The other thing was you can engage with the lyrics, right? Because invariably in the middle fold of a record, the lyrics were printed if the band was, proud of their lyrics, right? I've had a bunch of people, particularly in Italy, right, that told me that they learn English by reading the lyrics of their favorite rock bands and translating them and making sense of it. A lot of people.
I'm the one.
You were one of them?
Well, I learned English by reading the Beatles lyrics. And then when you did the Genesis album cover, I translated the lyrics in the magazine I was working for, and then selling England by the pound, came out in Italy. If you remember, Serenina by the Pound was a single sleeve, you know, it didn't open up. In Italy, the album came out, opened up, and the inside was the Italian lyrics, Italian translation by Armando Gallo. You know, so lyrics were very important at the time.
Yeah.
Well, so that brings to a good point, because at Songword Art House, we do things a little bit differently as a gallery. As a curator, I will pick a theme that has a connection with a musical element. And so we've done John Lennon, and we've done the blues, and now this one is Songs of Rebellion. And so the artist will then be given the opportunity to choose words or lyrics from a song that inspires them, and then use those words incorporated into the visual art piece. So talk to me a little bit about your connection with words and your art, because I have noticed in some of the work that you've done through over the years, you've used words, and there's this great synthesis between the beauty of the image and the power of the word that I just think is unique in that kind of presentation. So tell me a little bit about your experience with using words to communicate your visual message.
Well, first of all, I usually have music playing when I'm working. If I'm painting, I put a CD on, or I put my Apple Shuffle on, and just there's always music playing of some kind in the background. So I think as you work, because painting's kind of a solitary thing, you know, you're working away and you listen to this song, and very often it will go deeper because you're concentrating, you know, and you'll listen to the song and you go, oh, hi, I never heard that word before. Hang on a minute. And you go back and rewind it or put it back and hear it again, right? And you go, wow. Very often, just one line from a song or a phrase from a song is good for a visual. Oh, I think I'll make a painting of that, you know. So I've done that a lot. It's, yeah, there's a very healthy cross-fertilization between music and making images and so on, you know. And I picked some very interesting songs. I think you would agree, right? For your rebellion thing,
Absolutely.
they
Absolutely.
weren't the obvious,
I didn't even know of them before you brought it to my attention. So thank you.
right? They weren't the obvious, you know, punk, let's tear the world up kind of songs, right? They were rebellion of a different kind. I mean, the Joni Mitchell song is when you listen to it, it's the song of a very mature woman and her reflections on the world. And she's kind of saying, you know, how fucked up the world is. You know, it's like, did you notice this about the world? And she's basically saying, bless all these people that are causing all this chaos and destruction in the world, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very unusual for her. And I felt it needed to be put into that context. And of course, the biggest act of rebellion is to strap on a suicide vest. I mean, you can't be more rebellious than that, right?
Well, and self-destructive. And so I think that, to me, that's what's really cool about this particular piece. Is it's a commentary on rebellion, but in a self-destructive way,
Yeah.
Versus a lot of the other pieces that we'll have here. The other pieces that we'll have here, they're talking about, you know, F the government, or, you know, sticking it to the man, and, you know, fighting against all those things that were sort of de rigueur of the 70s and 80s. But this one is making a comment about, you know, self-harm and self-destruction. And I think that is on point and perhaps a little ironic for what's happening, you know, today. Would you agree?
She talks about all the cell phone zombies busy talking on their cell phones in the shopping malls, you know. She talks about guys that are passing on the right instead of passing on the left, right? She talks about really interesting things that bug her, you know. They really kind of get to her, you can tell. And she's just saying, well, this shit gets to me, but bless them anyway, you know. May your light shine on them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's very mature. It's a very mature song.
Well, speaking of which, let's just sort of flip to the other piece that you have that uses physical material, and that's this one, which is very powerful. And as soon as you showed it to me, I was just viscerally struck by it. It just said to me, "Yeah, Joe, this is exactly how you felt." I don't know, countless amount of times, not only having, you know, worked in television, but watch television, but just my connection with technology in general, and watching the news, what's happening in the world. And I don't know, not even that, but just, fixing my internet service if it goes on the, like, whatever it is. It could be something grand and it could be something simple, but the hatchet would come in handy many, many times. So thank you for putting that in there. And I wanted to ask you, what was the seed of inspiration behind this piece?
Originally, it was part of my question series. And the question was entertainment, question mark. It went across the bottom there. And it kind of, but it wasn't potent. It was funny. It was interesting, right? But then when you put the proposal to me of using rebellious images, I thought, oh, the perfect song I've always wanted to do something about is "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised" by Gil Scott-Heron. I've always wanted to do something about it. This was the perfect opportunity.
What a great song too. I mean, I hadn't heard that before you brought it to my attention. When I listened to it, I thought to myself, what year was this made? I mean, he's got a rant going, or like a rap, and something that you'd think that would be going on today, but that was in 1971, early 70s, right?
50 years old.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
50 years old.
And the message is so on point. The style is contemporary. I mean, talk about visionaries. He's the man.
And the revolution will not be televised.
The revolution will be live.
Right.
I know it gets a lot of attention. People come in here, especially a lot of young people, and they will go right to that piece and they just get it. So I appreciate that being a part of this, because we really strove to get a consistent energy, a rebellious energy, something that people could feel viscerally. And I think it's really important, the artist's role when times of strife are happening is not to ignore it, but to address it head on and express it. You probably experienced that, in your career, in your lifetime, through the 60s and 70s, as being an active artist, both, as a fine artist privately, and also as a commercial artist in advertising. So tell me a little bit, let's just dive a little deep into your rebellious spirit. Were you a rebellious kid, the kid that broke all the rules, and then just that it followed you as you became a professional, or did you come to it later?
Actually, my mum was very rebellious. My mum couldn't stand any kind of injustice, right? She would just get very, in fact, one time at my school, they announced that they were going to have cooking classes at the school, right? So I thought, great. I was like 8 years old, right? I thought, great, cooking class. I'd like to learn how to cook. And then they said, no, it's for girls only, no boys. So I went home to my mum and I said, hey, mum, they're having cooking classes at school and it's for girls only. I want to learn how to cook. So she goes striding down to the school, has it out with the headmaster, and I finished up in the cooking class with 30 girls. One boy.
Dummy.
Yes. Go.
My first glimpse of female liberation, So that spirit's always been in me. But I've gone through different phases in my life. I did feel I was never into violent revolution. That never seemed to be the way. It always seemed to be a waste of time. And it always seemed to be you could never win because they've got the guns, they've got the army, they've got the air force. You could never win. So to me, rebellion was more sort of obsequious, behind the scenes, pulling strings that people didn't know about, which is what was good about Time Out. Because Time Out came along.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about Time Out for people who may not be familiar.
Time Out came along in, I think it was 69. And there wasn't any, with all this stuff going on, all this new culture, and there was stuff going on in movies, in music, theater, ballet, everything. Every single art form was going through a revolution. But there wasn't really a magazine. There was a thing called What's On, which was kind of a straight guide to what's on in London, right? So we decided we were going to do the alternative guide, the other stuff that wasn't in the papers, wasn't advertised, right? And so what happened was I think we did the first 2 issues were giveaways. And people would look at it and they'd kind of go, oh, these guys are like us. Oh, just by the fact of what we were publicizing and what we were drawing attention to, oh, these guys are heads, they're like us. So the word got around. It's the alternative guide to London. And we got people from all these kind of underground arts sort of things going on in London coming to us. I always remember there was in the East End of London, which was the really, really rough part of London, there were these drag shows in these bars, really rough bars, working class bars. And these guys would do drag on the bar. They'd stand up and they'd get dressed up in these gaudy sort of sequin dresses and they'd sing songs, whatever the particular favorite was. But it was outrageous. I mean, we'd never seen that before. We'd seen the professional drag shows, but this was just, guys with hairy arms and we went, this is good. Go and see this. It's interesting. So people would sort of go, oh yeah, Time Out is cool. And we brought the focus on stuff that would never ever be known about. So consequently, everybody came to our office. Everybody that had a project, a play or a movie or a new jazz group or a new rock band, everybody came through our doors, either wanting a review of their new project, wanting us to go and see it. Maybe they wanted to place an ad. So of course, I got working with them as well, because I was art directing the magazine. And they'd say, well, can you design our ad for us? I say, yeah, of course I can. Yeah, no problem. So it was like it was like ground zero for what was going on in London.
But what did you find? Obviously, that was quite liberating as an artist, that you could push the boundaries and you could maybe approach your design in a way that was maybe more shocking or more in accordance with what was happening socially and politically at the time. And so I think that really is responsible for this explosion of creativity, is that people like you had the inspiration and also were given the opportunity by your employers to go ahead and do what you wanted for the most part. Now, I don't know if you've had that over the entirety of your career, but I have seen it several times. And in your advertising career in particular, it seemed like you were breaking ground by doing that Eyes and Ears program.
Yeah.
Eyes and Ears program, which was moving art away from the museums and into the billboards in Los Angeles. You had moved to Los Angeles. And so no one had done anything like that before. And then you'd also done some advertising on trucks, the side of trucks. And it wasn't, so much, it looked like art first and advertising second. And so I don't know any industry today or in the last 20 years that has that kind of philosophy that allows the artist to go ahead and do that. Maybe I'm wrong. You could probably correct me, but what's your thought on it? Was your rebellious spirit really nurtured in that way through both private and commerce?
Yeah, but like I said earlier, I'm not like a violent revolutionary. I think revolution can be done by just, like I said, pulling the strings, tweaking things here and there, right? So when I first came to LA, the thing I noticed the most visually was the huge billboards along Sunset Strip. And in those days, you may remember, rock bands would spend a fortune on those billboards. They had moving parts and neon lights, and some of them had smoke coming out of them. It was like their big vanity advertising project. And I looked at these things and I went, wow, we deserve to put some art up there. And of course, LA being the car culture that it is, I said, well, could we have a gallery where you can drive through in your car and you go to an art gallery, you don't have to get out of your car. And that caught people's imaginations. The billboard companies in those days had I think it was 10% of their space had to be given to non-profit organizations. If you were a non-profit, you could get free space, right? So I got together with an attorney and I founded a non-profit foundation called Eyes and Ears Foundation. And we got the space for free from the billboard companies. We got a grant from the California Arts Council to put the thing together, and off we went. And it's still to this day, people remember those images because there was no wording on them. They were just visuals, just images. And people still say, oh yeah, I remember that billboard. It was the corner of Wilshire and Santa Monica, whatever. And I remember it came up and we were waiting to see what the punchline was, And of course there wasn't a punchline. The punchline was, here is art. just for its own sake, you know. And of course, people could drive through the show in their car. Very Los Angeles, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it looks like you were able to take what you had learned in album art and you develop your surrealist side of yourself and stretch your wings, but also get paid for it, which is nice, you know, to have a career that allows you just to do that on a big scale.
And it
So,
kind of liberated billboards as well, right? Because now it happens quite a lot. People get free space and do stuff, you know. But yeah, we liberated billboards. We didn't think of it at the time.
and so so let's talk a little bit about where you are today, what you're doing. Obviously you're doing art for Songword and you've got your own exhibitions and you seem to be really political still perhaps about making sure that your art has something to say, whether it's in tandem with song lyrics or you know strictly imagistic. But tell me, do you consider yourself a political artist?
Not really, not in the conventional sense, you know. I mean, I've the last 4 years we've been through, I mean, it's just turned me off politics completely. I mean, politics to me is a complete waste of time. Um,
And yet you are inspired by it because there's pieces like the one "Brainwashed" by the George Harrison song that you did for us. And I don't know if it was just something that triggered your imagination based on our conversation, or this is just part and parcel of what you've been doing lately. But it's very much a political message. I mean, you chose a great song that had that, but these are things that are on your mind. You and I have talked about it, the brainwashing of society through all the technology, and you just you know just nailed it. I want to just turn around. It's right behind me, so let's take a look at it just closely. Okay, hold on a second. You see it? So this is the piece here, and it's got some amazing surrealistic images. The narrative has got the head of the man. Can you see it? It's hard for me to line it up, but there, it's the head of a man with his brain exposed. And of course, there is this satellite dish with all these different parts of channels or whatever you want to call it: truth, politics, scandal, sports, news, weather, porn, gossip, fake news. And there's Jesus pouring water on the fire that's being created by the laser beam that's coming out of that satellite dish. And then, of course, at the bottom of this waterfall is His Highness Mickey Mouse giving the finger and drowning in that pool of water while Walt Disney is filming it. So it's great fun. And of course, it's got a lot to say. So tell me a little bit about this piece. What was going through your mind when you came up with this?
well, I love the song. I listen to the song a lot, and the song makes me both smile and sort of feel very sad because it's a statement about the world we live in, you know. And it was you that inspired the creation of it because I was thinking of doing a painting of it, right? When you said, "Oh yeah," I said, "What I want to do is Brainwashed by George Harrison." I don't think you knew that song either, did you? Were you aware of it?
Nope, I didn't. I didn't. You
So
said it was the last song he ever did before he died.
yeah, which is quite amazing. He left it to be mixed by Jeff Lynne and his son, you know, to leave instructions. And once again, George is very he's kind of a benign revolutionary as well, you know. He just kind of says what's on his mind. He's sort of he says what I think is the purpose of the artist as well. He kind of says, "Have you noticed this? I noticed this. Did you notice it as well?" Whether it's good things or bad things, you know, the artist is the first one to draw attention to beauty, but he's also the first one to draw attention to ugliness and injustice and all the rest of it. So it's a double-edged sword in a way. And this song, he's not really lighting any fires. He's just saying, "This is my last statement to the world. You're all fucking brainwashed. Do you realize it? You're completely brainwashed. And it made me, for certain days, I'd put my phone down and I wouldn't use my phone. I just put it away and switch it off because I was very aware of what's going on. And we are. I mean, we are brainwashed.
One of the lines there, he says, "You're brainwashed. You're brainwashed by the media. You're brainwashed by the press. You're brainwashed by computers. You're brainwashed by mobile phones. Brainwashed by satellites. Yeah, brainwashed to the bone."
Yeah. And
So,
in the song, he even talks about how you're brainwashed when you're a baby in your pram. You're brainwashed at school. You're brainwashed by the NASDAQ and, Wall Street. Everything is all been bombarded by this stuff,
your images really got into my psyche as I was thinking about this interview. I had a dream last night that had these little mice that were running around, and they had like this cheese. They were given this cheese by this character that was above, like, because you have these great kind of skies that rip open or zip or unleash, and there's something behind it. And that figure behind it was giving these mice the cheese and going, "Yes, come on, little mice, eat the cheese, go into there." But of course, it's a trap. But the mice don't know this. They just think, "Oh, this is wonderful cheese." And so there's someone at the top who was pulling a string and trapping them in that little satchel of life. And I just woke up in the morning going, "Oh my God, I mean, this is life. This is how I see it. It's like we're all little mice who are just being fed the cheese. And it's leading to our own demise by who knows who or who knows what." But thank you for that. I mean, you really got
Did you realize? I mean, I can't remember when I learned to type. It's probably in the 70s, probably when I was at Time Out, actually. I learned to type, right? Because it was, it was worth doing. I could set type. We used to set the whole magazine, by the way, on a IBM Selectric typewriter. Remember those typewriters with the golf ball?
yeah.
We would set the whole magazine on that. So I learned to type. I never imagined at my age I'd become a typist. And that's basically what we all have become, you know that. We're all typists. We're all typing away all the time on our keyboard, right? We've been conditioned. It's like you buy one part of the program, you buy all of it. It's like you can't buy a computer and not have a phone, and you can't buy a phone and not have a computer because they all go together, right? And you buy a computer and you buy the keyboard, and that's the world you're in. That's the way you express yourself to the world, right? It's it's accumulative. You buy one part of it, you buy into the whole program.
Mhm.
And you probably notice how they're always trying to get you to update, continuous update, upgrade your system, get the new thing. You have to buy the new thing now, They've got us. They've got us really by the throat.
So then the timing is right, in my opinion, in our opinion at Songword, to just light the fire and say enough. And art is the way to do that historically. It's been artists, and they've been able to articulate the message of the people, to get the message out, whether it's billboards or it's the media or whatnot. But today there's just talking heads endlessly, or people are just phasing out and going on TikTok, or not, I'm talking about young people predominantly. But I saw a great documentary recently, the Bee Gees put out, or it was on the Bee Gees, and it was talking about how they rebelled against disco on the turn of the decade from the 70s to the 80s. And there was this DJ in Chicago who came up with the "disco sucks" line, and it caught on like wildfire
I
because
remember
people were
that.
just, once disco got into that comical, the disco duck and all that, people, they didn't want it. Didn't represent anything authentic to them. It became commercialized. And I see music today as being something that is, my kids call it trash rap. And, authentic rap from the 90s had something legitimate to say, but it's gone in a different direction. I spoke about this on the last Zoom meeting with Peter Horvath. It's just, there wasn't a whole lot to choose from a rebellious standpoint in terms of content of contemporary artists. So it's time, I think, to light the fire, the artist to say, hey, look what's going on in the world, say something about it, find a way. And so we are exhibiting current art. Yes, it's drawing back from old lyrics from different revolutions or periods of rebellion. But where do you fit in? I mean, you're an artist. You've you've just got as much energy as anybody I've seen artistically. How do you see your role in terms of passing the torch and inspiring the next generation?
I don't hold much hope.
All right, that's it. That's it. Thank you very much tonight.
I mean, I had an experience when I was living downtown. This would be about 4, 5, 6 years ago, probably. Do you remember when the Occupy thing was going on?
Yeah.
Remember that? Okay. So every first Thursday of the month downtown was what they called Art Walk. So all the galleries down there would be open. People would walk around, right? The Occupy people decided they were going to take over Art Walk because they had a demonstration in the daytime. I think it was outside the stock exchange or something, right? So they came down to Art Walk and they started giving out chalk to everybody. And they said, right, what are you thinking about? Write it on the streets, write it on the buildings, yeah, make a mess, just express yourself, right? So of course everybody got the chalk and they're writing big sort of, fuck the police and all that kind of stuff on the street. They're drawing on the buildings and everybody was kind of cool with it, right? Then the guys that gave the chalk out decided that wasn't enough. They wanted a bit of violence. They wanted a bit of trouble. So they were agitating people. And most people were like, oh, it's okay. I said what I wanted to say. I'm not into getting my head beaten by somebody. So there came a confrontation and I heard about it and I walked down to take a look at it, right? And there was the police across the street and these guys sort of rabble rousing, right? As I walked down the street, off to the side of the streets are all these police in like riot gear. The plastic shields, the helmets and the batons and all the rest of it. There was a van, a black, sort of very sinister looking van with a dish on the roof, sort of waiting in the wings, right? And I thought, oh shit, this is not going to be good. This is going to be real trouble. So I was about maybe no more than 10 feet away from this one particular guy, and he threw a beer bottle at the police, and that was it. These guys came from nowhere and just crushed everything, right? And I just thought to myself, okay, revolution, that's not going to go too far. Because, the police nowadays, they've got all the old military equipment that the army got rid of. You know that, right? They are armed to the teeth and they're armed to put down civil insurrection, whether it's shooting people, gassing people. It ain't going to happen. Sorry to tell you, Joe.
So you don't think that art can make change peacefully?
It can, yeah, it can. That's what I'm saying. It can make a change by pulling the strings without being seen. But I mean, take your show, for example. The best thing that could have happened to your show would have been for some art that was so outrageous that the show got shut down. Malibu Council came, you can't show stuff like that in Malibu, and they shut the show down, right? But it hasn't happened, right?
Not yet. You just give me some ideas.
You notice as you walk in the gallery, the first painting on the left-hand side, it's a black and white one. It says motherfucker, right? Yeah. I mean, you couldn't have put that in the gallery 20 years ago. People have freaked out. Now it's okay. Everything's fine. Yeah.
Well, we do get our reaction, and that was intentional, both from the artist and myself. But I tell you, I had this immediate kind of business brain turn on myself and say, well, it's in Malibu. Just starting getting my presence in the community. Do I really want to off-put people who may be offended by, profane language? And the rebel in me, which was born and bred there from the day I was born, clicked in. And I'm like, absolutely, this is going in there. And this has to go in there. Why? Because it's good, number one. And number two, because it's good because it expresses a feeling that is pervasive throughout society on a number of different levels, whether it's the political situation or the COVID situation or whatever. We're all just frustrated to the hilt. And there's so many people telling us what to do, whether in positions of authority. And frankly, I don't believe anybody. And so my old mantra when I was 10 years old and rebelling against teachers and schoolmasters is still there with me, and it just says, "Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me." And that's was written back in the 90s. And I just, it's just so, it's so on point right now. And so to your point, you know, we didn't do anything that pushed it over the edge to get us shut down.
Right.
But that's not a bad thing. That's like, I'm waiting for somebody just to come and just say, Joe, you really have to, you know, see that what I've done here. What do you think? And then we'll have that conversation, and then just maybe provoke the conversation with the public at large.
What do you think would shut a show down in this day and age?
Well, sex
Yeah,
is,
sex is still the one button to push, right?
it kind of is, but it isn't. I think violence, violence is more of the taboo than sexuality, but certainly the mix between sex and violence is the kind of thing that American movies has always shied away from, and to some regard. It came up in the 70s, but then this wave of political correctness that is sweeping over probably, you know, at least North America and the world. You can't really get away with it. Even my own kids are telling me, Dad, you can't put that there. And usually it came from the kids to say, they're the ones pushing the line and the parents were shutting them down. It's the reverse now.
What were they telling you? You can't do that. What was the example?
Oh, I can, there's so many, I can't even get into things I say, things I'll put, you know, art I'll put up there. It's just, they are afraid of rocking the boat. There's just a lot of, you know, political correctness that is crushing real voice and real conversation. And to the, you know, the disco sucks example, if people came out en masse and started saying trash rap sucks, you know, the rap now, which is all about bling and money and drugs and all that, I bet there would be an equal backlash that said, that's racist. You can't say, you know, anything rap because it's predominantly Black music, and just though that's a fire point right now, and they would just shut that down, even though the music is really not good, in my opinion. It's just, there's a quality difference. I don't know what your thought on the matter is, but you can't get away with it anymore because there's this political correctness that's going on.
Yeah, that's the battle to fight, isn't it? Really is.
I'm trying to get you fired up, Paul. I'm trying to get you fired up because I want you to be the guy that comes to me with something so outrageous that you're going to shut us down. So,
well, you know, you did give me an idea, you know. Remember the piece I brought to you, the mirror with the knife in it?
Yeah.
And you said it was too dangerous. Which, yeah.
No, that was dangerous not because of the message. It was dangerous because kids come in here and there were shards of glass and a big knife and a big spear in it. But I liked your message for sure. It was just, you know, I didn't want a lawsuit from the kids. Some kid who goes, Daddy, what's this? And grabs it and cuts it.
Right. So it's actually given me the idea to do a series called Really Dangerous Art. Stuff where you can actually hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Well, what's the message? What's the message? See,
Do
that's
not touch.
purpose. So,
You know the whole thing, you're not supposed to touch stuff in galleries, right?
yes.
Really don't touch this stuff. Like I'd have like a rock from Chernobyl, you know.
Awesome.
It's
That's great.
radioactive, some kind of poison, a cage with a rattlesnake in it. Do not touch.
I like how you want to change the world, one death at a time.
Yeah, really dangerous art. It gave me a nice idea.
It is, I think there's something there, honestly. But you know, I still love your surrealist stuff. I think it's just captivating and mesmerizing. And we do get lots of people in here who will just sit there and they will look at it and study it and trying to figure it out like a puzzle. And that's just magic. I love it. So I look forward to seeing more like that from you. We are so grateful for your contribution for this Rebellion series and this conversation. I would love to have more of these conversations. I know that there's more about you and your career and what you're doing, but I think that it's possible the next exhibition we do would be, you know, art inspired by songs of lust. So we might call, you know, Paul Whitehead back for that particular version. So let's see.
I already have a piece.
I'm sure you do. Sure you do. Panties from Chernobyl, something like that. I don't know.
I did a series called The 8 Deadly Sins.
Yes.
And of course, lust is one of the sins, right?
Do you say so?
And I showed it in Torino in Italy, and there's 8 paintings that make up one big painting, right? They put a piece of black cloth over lust, which just drew more attention to it. You know, everyone's going, "What's under this black cloth?"
If it was a kilt, I could understand. What's under the kilt?
Yeah, so it's already done.
All right. Well, let's.
Well, I
Let's
think it's ironic that we did this in this time. I mean, we've got a really excellent show there. You pull some really great pieces together, but nobody's coming, right?
It's a problem. It's a
We're getting
problem.
very, very small attendance.
You know, we were great. September and October were fantastic, and we did well. We sold a lot of pieces, and then with the election and the COVID spike, it's gone down. But with the vaccine coming and sort of this renewed spirit, hopefully people will come back and see art. I know the people that do come here are so grateful that we're open. They really are. They're just love to just be here and see art again. And they see the piano that we have here at the end of the gallery. And that's always been there for customers to come in and play. And so I know you're a musician. So next time you're in here, we're going to get you to come in and do something for us.
Yes.
We want to fill the air with music and art and great, good stuff. So, sir, you are always invited. And I just want to mention that we did have a live painting event with you scheduled. And of course, we were shut down because of COVID spike. So we're going to reschedule that with another piece down the line. We'll have to play that by ear, but I look forward to it.
Yep.
So thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it, Paul. I'm a big fan, and so are the people that come into our gallery. So for those of you who haven't seen his pieces here at the gallery, definitely check them out. There's something to see. They're not 2-dimensional or digital pieces. They're 3-dimensional. And it makes a big impact when you see it in person. So please come out, and thank you again. And we'll just say adieu at this point.
Can I ask what Paul is going to paint live? What are you going to paint live, Paul?
I don't know.
What did you have in mind when it was?
I was going to paint Brainwashed.
Oh, I see.
I was going to paint that over 2 weekends.
Yeah, we're going to have music. We're going to have music accompanying it. It was going to be great. And it will be. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Always up for the challenge.
Indeed.
Good.
All right, sir. Cheers. Raise your cocktail, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Songword Art House.
All right.
Conversation.
And we have a friend from Buenos Aires here. Gabriel Fox. There you go.
Oh, hey.
Gabriel.
All right. Good night, folks.
All righty. All the best, guys. Happy holidays.
Same to you, man.
Thank you.
Bye.